Welcome sports fans, internet bantersauruses and members of the portable Jean de Villiers Appreciation Society. We hope you are both well, ladies. Despite it being 40 degrees in the shade, we've chosen Paarl as today's location because Jean kept being late and it was actually easier to pick up Chris Morris from the nearest wine farm owned by Banter. Before we catch up with them and today's esteemed guest to my left, let's catch up on the latest in the wide world of sports. In cricket, the Eastern Cape Sunrisers are making a late charge for the Betway SA20 playoffs with their fourth straight win. With 12 wickets in the competition, Sunrisers paceman Marco Jansen stands head and shoulders above everyone else, making him the highest SA cricketer since Herschel Gids. In rugby, 38-year-old Springbok stalwart Deon Fourie replaces regular Stormers captain Salman Murat against Leinster in Dublin today. Murat will come off the bench to replace Fourie in the second half to ensure Deon makes his 9 p.m. curfew at the Kirikoses. In tennis, underdog Madison Keys finally got her hands on a Grand Slam trophy after holding off defending champion Aryna Sabalenka to win the Australian Open women's singles title. Sabalenka took defeat gracefully and in her stride like a true chap and then instantly smashed her racket into pieces. In Formula One, Lewis Hamilton said of his first pre-season Ferrari test drive, "I've been lucky enough to have many firsts in my career, but this one was one of the best feelings of my life. Just wait until he loses his virginity." Meanwhile, Jeremy Clarkson test drove his new Range Rover for the first time, and by the looks of it, Clarkson has lost not just his hairline, but also his will to live. Clarkson actually looks like he's just been told that they've added an Ethiopian blend at his local coffee shop. And finally, in snow polo, if you're wondering why your Azerbaijani neighbor, Mr. Gurbanov, has been a little tense this week, it might be because the Azerbaijan Land of Fire team is one of 6 snow polo teams traveling to St. Moritz, Switzerland this weekend to compete in the 40th edition of the Snow Polo World Cup. That's right, folks, the rich have found a way to make polo even more exclusive. All you need to compete is a horse and a flight to Switzerland for you and your horse and your mistress and your mistress's horse. Paarl's Val de Vie is vying to host the 41st Snow Polo Champs. They have a polo field and ample snow, which in South Africa is traditionally snorted after the first chukka on a silver platter or the dashboard of a waiter's polo. Warm greetings to my co-hosts, Jean de Villiers, Chris Morris. Wonderful to see you guys. Definitely not snowing here in Paarl. Dis warm is dit nie.
It's not snowing, Nick. Where do you come up with the absolute bollocks that you just spoke about in that intro?
It's all happening right now, all around the world, John. But today's guest is a former county cricketer, award-winning sports presenter, commentator, journalist, raconteur, attacking middle-order batsman, deep thinker, occasional medium pacer, erudite writer, international hair icon, and former host of ITV1's Britain's Best Dish. He undoubtedly possesses the most polished, articulated, manicured, and debonair demeanor in the history of the game. Please put your hands together for the James Bond of cricket. Mark, Charles, Jefford, Jardine, Elvis, Nicholas. Woo!
Alalau.
I thought it was Chris. And today, for the very first time, we also have a renter crowd that Mark brought along. Yeah.
This is called Alvin and the Animals. And they're here for the action. You read that order cue very well. It's not an easy thing to do.
Thank you very much.
Charlie Brown and the boys.
And I'll tell you what isn't an easier thing to do either is commentating on a cricket match in Paarl and then having to leave that and be on a talk show.
This is the easy bit of the day, I hope.
We thank you for being on Banter with the boys. Mark, Nicholas, you've commentated around the world, many competitions. The Betway SA20, what is there to love about it? How does it compare?
Is this a Betway sponsored program?
Yeah, we are all eating at the Betway trough right now.
It's a fantastic tournament with an outstanding sponsor. All in modern cricket today, really, the game can only march forward with sponsorship. And when you get people who get behind it in the way Betway has, well, you get a bigger check. So they're great. Actually, on a serious note, I love them. I think they're great fun. I think the Betway catch, a couple of million here and there, and their general, what's the word? Their general integration into the game. I think it's good for the game, and it brings it to the thing about cricket is this sort of elitism tag that's followed it around its whole life. And I think this tournament and the community aspect of this tournament and all the sponsors' involvement is changing that. And I think that's one of the most attractive parts about it. It's not you don't have to think of it as the biggest event in the world, but you do have to think of it as an opportunity for people to come together in these community diasporas around the country and really get behind a team. So suddenly the narrative is cricket in the summer, which it hasn't been for a long time. So I'm in favour of everybody, the tournament, the sponsors, Graham Smith who runs it, and even Jean de Villiers.
Thank you very
You
much.
didn't have to say that. Thank you.
Paarl, let's go.
I did because he's bigger than me.
No, but Mark, you say that, and you know what was? I mean, we've got Dinesh Karthik playing for the Wales, and he played the first game, and they were
Just say
interviewed.
for us.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah.
You know, seeing that I live here in Paarl.
Massive Paarl man.
Yeah, but you know, for the Royals. No, not us. He was.
These are Victoria, okay.
Yeah, they're
Beg your
still
pardon?
here. They lost again to that.
The Royals bought my house.
Yeah, but so Dinesh Karthik, they were, you know, he was mic'd up, and I can't remember who was, Hazy. Hazy was interviewing him, and he was saying, you know, he asked him why did you start to come play in the Betway SA20? Okay, because a guy like him, great profile, etc. You know, he probably doesn't need this. And he was saying, well, in his view, this is the second biggest T20 competition in the world after the IPL. And not just that, the fact that you come here, you're standing there, fielding, you know, you look at the beauty of this stadium over here and the beauty of South Africa and just the experience. That must count a lot for this product as well. Now, I think it's not just about the cricket, the fact that we've been able to really produce a product that's great in terms of the quality of the cricket, but also from a South African point of view, we showcase South Africa and what South Africa has to offer. It's kind of a combination of all of
It's
that.
an interesting point, isn't it? Why is it immediately so popular and successful? I was talking to Joe Root about it before play, and Joe's comfortable here. He really likes it here. He really likes the tournament. He feels that there's value in playing in it. It's a good standard of cricket. And then the lifestyle outside it is so fantastic. You know, he's been looking at houses, I think, on the Pearl Valley estate. And so I think it's an attractive place to be. And, you know, you look at the cricket grounds, the Wanderers, maybe at its most vibrant best, maybe at its visceral best, is perhaps the most exciting ground in the world when full.
Yeah.
Newlands is perhaps the most beautiful ground in the world when full. Paarl is perhaps the most charming. St George's Park is this sort of great energy of music and personality and energy, which is fantastic. And Kingsmead's a bit quiet.
Yeah. And then obviously,
Then you get Pretoria to take all the catches and take the money away. But so my thing on that, John, is what I love about the league, first of all, is that the first thing you need to sell to players is that's the product of cricket. And the cricket has been good. And I haven't spoken to an overseas player who hasn't said the cricket itself has been good.
yeah.
And what it has done with the cricket being good and drawing big names around the world is that it has drawn the people. And yes, a lot of people are being drawn in because you can win a potty load of money. But people are coming to enjoy that game again. And back in the day, quite a while ago, the Benson and Hedges, that used to be sold out every single game with the orange stumps and all of that. And with that, you bring in the crowds, and how young is the crowd at the moment? And that for me is always, that's what stands out for me, is that what this is doing is for our next generation of cricketers are forming heroes of the current players that are here now. So just a great league in general. And honestly, as a former player, you always get asked, what league did you like really want to play in and all of that? And this is honestly the one that I say I've honestly missed out in playing, because this just looks like an absolute joy.
I'll just come back to Kingsmead for a second, because I took the mickey a bit because they're having a rough season, the Durban Supergiants. But when I first came to South Africa, which was a long time ago, I was in Durban, living in a youth hostel and playing some cricket on the bluff for Berea Rovers, initially in their second 11 and then got into their first 11. But the thing that sort of created heroes for me amongst South African players was watching at Kingsmead. And Barry Richards and Mike Proctor, who are two of the greatest cricketers that I've ever seen, and early heroes of mine. And Kingsmead was a much simpler ground then. Obviously, it's been developed out now into something else. But Durban was a magical city for a kid coming out from England trying to make his way in the game. And I was immediately captured by the sort of South African magic then, and have been coming back over many, many years, as often as possible. But I put a lot down to those Kingsmead days and Barry Richards and Mike Proctor, who were inspirational, brilliant. I mean, you could argue that Barry was one of the greatest batsmen who ever lived, and you could argue that Michael Proctor is, alongside Sobers, as one of the greatest all-rounders who ever lived, with Jacques and Kapil Dev and people. So it's been an inspiration for me, this country, for a long time.
Talk about being, I think, an underage groundsman at Southampton and seeing Mike Proctor.
Well, yeah, that's true. I wasn't a groundsman. When you were on trial at a county in those days, you were on the ground staff, and you played second 11 games, but you moved the covers around the joint, you painted the sight screens, you painted the internal walls of the ground, you bowled at the senior players and the nets, you took them
Operated the
drinks,
scoreboard.
and you helped the main guys operate the scoreboard. And the first game that I did as a real apprentice, I mean, even I was still at school, was 1977, when Mike Proctor took 4 and 5 balls, and including Barry Richards and Gordon Greenwich in those 4.
Oh, wow.
And Procky steamed in from the Northlands Road end of the ground, round the wicket, getting the big in-swinger going. And in fact, he got 5 in 6, but the umpire, old Tommy Spencer, who was past it and about to retire, couldn't give the 5th one out, a guy called Nigel Cowley, stone dead LBW, because his whole body was shaking and his finger going up all the time, giving these LBWs.
And he was coming around the wicket as well, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
with the big in-swingers. And he bowled out Greenwich and all the others were LBW. Barry's always said he hit his. Oh no, another one was bowled, a guy called John Rice. But the point was that Procky had this flair, this charisma, this extraordinary ability to ignite a crowd and ignite a team around him, which was why, incidentally, the county, Gloucestershire, became known to all the locals as Proctorshire.
No way.
In the years that he played. And a lot of people, we still refer it to Proctorshire. And when he died, they had a service for him down there. And they also televised live the service here in Durban. And all the banders and everything were all Proctorshire. He galvanised a whole county with his genius. Yeah. My dad died when I was 10, nearly 11. I went to a school. What do you want to know?
Well, how was that for an 11-year-old?
Well, look, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, what can you say? But I had fallen in love with cricket very much because of him and music. He was a fabulous musician. He played in a band he was a piano player actually, but he was also a fabulous drummer. And so he was in a band called the Straubs that played in the 60s and were quite well known. And so music and cricket came through Dad. And then he died at that age, and we played every night in the garden. We'd come back from work and we'd bat and bowl at each other. And my English heroes like Jon Snow and Ted Dexter and people developed through that relationship with my dad. And then he died when I was young. And what happened to me was that cricket wrapped its arms around me and became my go-to point of reference in my life, along with the Beatles, who were pretty good too, and has been ever since. And it's really no different now from what it was then. I still love the game. I'm still lucky with the friends I have through the game. I still get asked to appear on a show like this because of my relationship with cricket. And so it's been one enormous privilege, really, for a long time.
Did you take up any? Do you play any instruments?
I did.
Music aside, or
No, I did. I played the guitar then, but I dropped it all. I couldn't face it for some reason. I think cricket, you can play with your mates, and so you have a collective around you that is a support structure. But music, guitar and piano, you do on your own, and I think I found that very, very demanding not having him there, incredibly sad. I have to say, my mother tells me that I was absolutely anyway, particularly at the guitar. So she says, you tell this story about your music, but God, you couldn't even play in tunes.
So Elvis is not from...
No, Elvis is from 1977. Again, I was on trial at Hampshire, and I had long hair, sort of lank long hair, and the guys came to pick me up to go to I was on a trial match at the Hampshire Second Level, and they picked me up from a little sort of hostel type motel thing in Southampton. And the doorbell rang, and the lady ran it, opened the door, and there was this guy called Mike Hill standing there. And I'd just read in the paper that Elvis Presley had died. And I loved Elvis, And I stood at the top of the stairs in my underpants and a t-shirt, and I went, oh, for the money, like all that sort of stuff. And they all went, Elvis! And that's how I got called.
Could you do more?
Can I do more?
That was
Not in front
really
of you,
enjoying
no.
it.
Can we get you more wine, Mark?
You sure? Yeah, why not?
So your love affair started with South African love affair starts in the late 70s with that tour, but then you go back to England, you start playing county cricket, but then in the late 80s, tell us how you end up back here, people like Garth LaRue, Stephen Jeffries?
Well, I came a lot in the early 80s and played on the Bluff in Durban, actually. And that was good fun. And that was when I had the incident where Procky, and the game was rained off and I was going to play against my hero. And Vince had been called away to play, I think, in the Curry Cup game. And anyway, and I didn't play against Proctor or Vince then, but they've become great friends. But I came back in '89 to play for Cape Town Cricket Club. And I lived in a house at Marina de Gama. Now, I didn't come to play professionally. Stephen Jeffries had played a season at Hampshire and said, you've got to come out, just hang out with us and, play a bit. I said, I don't want to play. I just want to go to the beach and go to Komaki and pull craze out of the sea and all, that sort of stuff. Anyway, I lived with Stephen Jeffries, or Beauty as they called him, and Garth. And we had a lot of fun. And I played, and they taught me into playing for Cape Town Cricket Club, and I went to the nets and I said, look, I'd maybe play in the second team or third team or something. So they picked me to play. When we won the game to get over the line in a run chase, I was about 45 not out. And the journo covering, because in those days club cricket got a bit of newspaper time.
And commentary was good back then.
and the newspaper guy came to the club president or chairman or whatever it was, and said, who's this guy batting here? And they said, it's a new player. They suddenly realized they hadn't registered me to play in the tournament. So they said, it's a new player called Mark Nikolai, a visitor from Greece. So this headline comes up, new Greek batsman gets them over the line. And then the following week, I got 206.
In an afternoon.
In an afternoon. So the president, rather cleverly, on Friday night, after a couple of beers, suddenly thought, we haven't registered Nicholas, and made it to wherever you had to go in those days. I don't know what it was, but anyway, he registered me as Mark Nicholas.
Stephen Jeffries.
What a man.
Childhood hero of mine, both Garth LaRue and Stephen Jeffries. Guys who obviously couldn't play for their country. You played a lot of county cricket. You mentioned Stephen coming over to play for Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I actually looked up that season, and in the was it a B&H final?
They just got, yeah.
Incredible.
He bowled brilliantly. He got 5 for 15 or something, and we won the game. And he bowled it. He knocked him over. He swung it. We won the toss. So a good toss to win. And we went for 30 off 2. And I thought, this is going pear-shaped here. And I thought, you've got to completely change tack. And I said to him, we're going to put a couple of slips in. I'm going to go in. He said, what are you doing? There's some boundary fielders out. They're going in 15 and over here. And I said, no. Slow the whole thing down. And I call for a helmet, and it takes ages. Just stay calm. Just slow the whole thing down. Just take the air out of the balloon here. Derbyshire batsmen won't like it. Just go slowly. Rearrange the field, put a helmet on, come in the short leg, and you can see the batsman bristling, desperate to get at it. And the next ball, I think it was Bruce Roberts, who actually had come out of Transvaal, played forward, and the Butte got it to swing back inside onto his pad, straight into my hands of short. Like that was one. 3 balls later, a bloke called Peter Bowler. And the next ball, Johnny Morris came in and was dropped at slip. So they could have lost 3 for nothing in the over. And he went on and got 5 for 20, maybe it was. And we won the cup. And he was one of the greatest team cricketers I've ever known. In any conditions, he'd find the best of himself. Absolutely amazing guy. I'm sad I don't see him these days. I don't think he's in Cape Town anymore, but a fantastic bloke, Stephen Jeffries.
You speak about Benson Hedges day-night cricket. Is the SA20 the closest we've come to that? Because that was just magic in the day.
Oh, well, from my point of view, I mean, obviously I grew up watching Benson Hedges with my dad playing, and I think it is the closest because you've got youngsters, first of all, coming in, as we mentioned. You've got the kids playing the games of cricket behind where the crowd is, taking the bins, putting them in, those are the stumps, and that's what I grew up doing, and next to the grass embankment, so Paarl, Durban, Centurion, it's all similar where you've got those grass embankments. So for me, I think it is the closest that we've had.
I look at it now, the SA20, and let's be honest, everyone has really bought into it from a South African point of view. I speak to so many of my mates who wouldn't necessarily watch cricket, but now they watch every single day. They've really bought into the product. It's not just about the cricket, it's about the experience, about going out as a family and just having
There's a few clever things they've done too. I mean, Graham Smith, deserves so much of the credit because he had a vision, and he's applied the vision step by step. And I think it was cleverer than people thought at the time to invite IPL owners to own the franchises, because they had a commercial model that they could scale up here in South Africa in terms of where South African cricket very easily. Their understanding of fan engagement was probably not second to none in world sport, but second to none maybe outside of America.
Yeah.
And so they bought that here. And now when you go to the Wanderers, it's yellow.
Yeah.
When you go to Newlands, it's blue. When you come here, it's pink, you know, and it's a simple thing. But to do that well, it creates the thing I was talking about at the start of the show, which is community.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what's made it. And people care now.
Totally.
People really care. I mean, you get stopped. I was stopped the other day in a coffee place in Cape Town. A few guys outside, they said, "Hey, Mark Nicholas, come and say, you know, what do you think? What do you think can my Cape Town do? I'm going on Saturday. Do you think, geez, I get so uptight with Brevis. I'm like, well, what happened? Tell me about Brevis. Why didn't he score more runs?" And, you know, they're properly engaged. So the narrative that has been rugby for a long time, even in the summer months, has changed a bit, and cricket's got a place in the summer months now that South Africans are enjoying.
Someone said the same thing. Someone said to me the other day, when's the T20 tournament starting? And South Africa were having their T20 challenge, if you want to call it that. And that's the normal domestic tournament as they would do. And I said, no, that's actually on at the moment. And the guy said to me, no, the real T20 tournament, when's that starting? And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Summer in South Africa is the best weeks of the year, in my opinion, in this country. And that the fact that we've got Betway SA20 now it's changed the whole narrative of over the December. If we don't have Test cricket, we've
Exactly that.
this.
The Betway SA20, you now know, okay, mid-Jan to end of Feb, mid to end of Feb, it's SA20, you know, and you kind of plan accordingly. It's become a fixture in your diary, and I think that is important just in terms of how people live, because you're used to doing the same things, getting into a habit, and this, even though it's only in year 3, it's already become a habit for people in South Africa to attend these games.
Speaking of fan engagement, it's time to look at what we call Banter with the fans, Mark Nicholas, where we find out how loud our cricket fans can shout into a microphone.
We at the Betway SA20. Make sure you guys pull up. Watch the whole episode. It's about to get crazy.
The crowd, the music, it feels so good.
Summer and cricket go hand in hand.
What's your favorite thing about the Betway SA20 cricket series?
It's fast, electric.
For me, it's just the people.
Yes, it's very exciting, very fun.
South Africans, we all love a good time.
Let's go!
Everyone's dancing around, you have a draw.
The quality of cricket, international stars taking part in such a wonderful, unbelievable league. You just don't get better than this.
If you guys had to join the commentary team, what's one phrase that you guys would say to sound like a pro?
Walk on, stay on, be on.
That's him, got him, gone.
If there's grass on the wicket, we play cricket.
That's a beamer.
What's one question you'd ask the commentary team?
Do you ever get bored of the other person? How do you keep coming up with different phrases?
How do they keep all the energy the whole day long?
I think that there is to cricket an ebb and flow. And so I think you have to understand what that means in terms of how you commentate, and how you don't ever want to over-pitch everything because there's nowhere else to go. So it's very important. There was a quiet time in today's game, and Alvin, the director, gets in our ear and says, "You commentators need to liven this up." And I'm thinking, well, there's nothing to liven up, so don't pretend to the audience something's happening that isn't. Yes. Maybe you can give your analysis more energy, but in moments when nothing happens, you maybe analyze a bit more, or you tell a sub-story somewhere about something you know about a player, or you come up with some stats that might apply to the tournament. You do things to fill that little sort of trough, and then it'll rise again, and then you've got to go with it, and your voice has got to go with it. And the commentators that are always up here have got nowhere to go. So the trick is to be able to ride with that ebb and flow. And so, what's the question, do you ever get bored? Because
That was one of the questions.
No, because to me, each part of the game is an entity of its own and deserves respect, because you need patience for cricket, full stop. You cannot watch cricket without patience. Even 2020 cricket requires patience.
Even though sometimes you'll be working with someone that you might not be friends with or like that much, there's a professional element to it. And the fact that cricket, the love for cricket, brings you together, and then even though you might not be friends necessarily with that person, there's energy because of the love for something that you're talking about.
Is that how you felt when you and Butch talk together?
Yes. No, well, it's the same with rugby. I think that common denominator, talking about it, brings something.
And you need to both have the same ambition for what you're putting to act.
Yeah.
Because in the end, right, all we are is the conduit between the audience and the product. So we're trying to get the product to the audience in the best possible way we know how. And that requires the 2 or 3 of you on air to respect each other and respect the sport that you're talking about in a way that the audience then buys into it. And that's a very important part of the job.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that you're a guest in people's living rooms. So you have to treat the moment as if you're in their living room with them.
And they're part of it.
It's very important because imagine if you're sitting here and you go off on a tangent or you destroy the myth or you undervalue the ambition. At home, they're like, it's very important that you see it in exactly the same enthusiastic manner as they do at home.
I personally feel it's important that it's our job to sell the product. That is, first of all, the game of cricket. Betway SA20 is a different type of thing that we need to sell. We don't really need to sell it because the cricket's good enough. But if you, as you say, in the quiet moments of the game, that's when you really need to sell the game to people. And
funny enough, it's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because I don't think you need to sell the exciting moments.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point.
No.
So selling the game is a slightly cleverer thing than it might appear to be because the audience isn't a fool. So when you bang on and hype, the audience has enough of that. What you actually need is to understand how to sell the product, and that's part of that ebb and flow.
You mentioned the embarrassing moments behind the mic. What are some of the biggest ones?
Oh,
Do you have any bowlers holding batsmen's woolly type of scenarios?
no.
Well, I've got one that I remember.
Embarrassing one, interesting one.
I've got one that I remember from you that was a little bit embarrassing.
Oh dear.
Yeah. It was a test match in South Africa, and there were 2, let's call them little people.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yes! We're going to show this clip, actually.
No, but don't show. No, don't show.
Yeah,
that's no.
Just zoom in when you watch it.
Can I please, if you do show this, can I please apologise in advance for nothing short of idiocy?
Short. Why did you say short? Why is short?
Hell, Mark. You can't say short.
Okay, well, it's important to start young. Look at this. Spin it. Oh, no, like that. Yeah.
That was funny.
Tony, Greg, let's just talk about Channel 9.
So one of only 3 players in the history of the game to average over 40 with the bat and 33 with the ball.
Tell us about your experience of Kerry Packer laying into you.
Does the South African audience know who Kerry Packer is?
We do.
Well, the sort of Australian Donald Trump, right?
We do know Kerry Packer.
The Johan Rupert, the Australian Johan Rupert.
Kerry was a television magnate, really. His father, Frank Packer, so Frank Packer was a publishing magnate with newspapers. Then Kerry took over television, really, with private ownership of Channel 9 that changed the television landscape in Australia. And then his son, James, made his money from the gambling world and casinos. But Kerry was an extremely powerful, outspoken, loud man who with an amazing brain, a remarkable man, an incredibly generous man, but a frightening man. And to those of us who worked for Channel 9, he was terrifying. I mean, a bullish, dominant force. And he created World Series cricket, which changed cricket commercially in 1977 and 78, when he hired all these players from all over the world to play in his own cricket circus, as it was called, World Series cricket at the time.
And the Rebel League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Greggy captained the rest of the world side, and Clive Lloyd captained the West Indies side, and Ian Chappell captained the Australian side in the tournament, and a lot of top South Africans got exposure there. In fact, probably all of the best at the time, so Barry Richards, Mike Proctor, Eddie Barlow, Garth LaRue, Clive Rice. So Kerry had in the commentary box at Channel 9, there was a red phone, like a bat phone. And when it rang, everybody knew it was Kerry. It was a direct line, either from his box at the Sydney Cricket Ground or from his home or from his office at Channel 9. And when it rang, only the producer answered it, and everybody in the room, including Benno and Greg and Chappell and Laurie, who were the stalwarts, and then the new ones were Taylor, Healy and me, and everybody would go, and the producer would pick it up.
Just say, how did they go? Just try that again.
Stop it.
Just.
Except for Benno, who just kept typing. He looked up with interest, right? Anyway, Kerry used to pick it up, and he famously, I mean, he did all sorts of things. He once picked it up to the control room, and he took a game show off air. He said, "This is a load of son. Put a Western movie on." And he said, "I can't, Kerry. There's 2.5 million people watching this game show." He said, "Son, I own the network. Take this off and put on a Western." So, you know, a fistful of dollars, and Clint Eastwood was suddenly on the screen. But so he had a view on the cricket always, and he believed in certain types of commentary and he hated it when the commentators drifted away. And he'd ring up and complain about someone they were trying. Anyway, I was a newbie at the time, and it was a wet day in Tasmania, and it was a one-day international against New Zealand. And I'd commentated at the second stint on the morning, and then the first and the third, and then I was just walking out of the door to go to lunch, and the back phone rang, and the producer picks it up and goes, "Yeah, Mr. Packer, yeah. Oh, mate, no, mate, he's here now, yeah. Where's Mark? Gary." And I'm sort of hauled back in from the hall outside. "Yeah, he's coming, Mr. Packer, yeah. Gary, it's Gary, for you." And I go, and I go to the phone, and it's a landline phone, and it's a terrible line, and I get under the desk, and I'm trying to fix the connection, and I said, Mr. Packer, it's Mark Nicholas here." He said, "Son." I said, yes, Mr. Packer. "Son, stop telling us how cold it is in Tasmania, and how everybody's having a time dressed in their anoraks and drinking hot soup out of their thermos flask. Son," he said, "the only people having a time are those of us at home who've got to listen to you." I'm under the table trying to fix this line.
We know the feeling now.
And this conversation went on. And then he demanded I come to his office and bring those witch Taylor and Healy with you. And the three of us went down and met Kerry Packer in person. And all he wanted was to talk to three young guys about sport. And we were in there for 3.5 hours in Kerry Packer's office. And he believed that, you know, in sort of a lot of Richie Benno's mantras, don't speak unless you can add to the picture. I agree that the modern era has changed that a bit, and most networks want commentators to talk more.
Mark Nicholas, we have a commentators quiz we'd like to play with you, Jean de Villiers and Chris Morris. You have unbelievable hair. These guys did too. Do we also say you, Jean, and Chris, identify some of these cricketers? Let's start with this one over here.
Curtly Ambrose.
John Mametsa.
Curtly Ambrose.
Correct, Curtly Ambrose. Easy one.
Andre Russell.
Andre Russell. A little bit harder.
Clive Rice.
There we go. What about this one here?
Kevin Peterson.
Kevin Peterson.
Malinga.
Lassie.
Naran.
Who's that?
Naran.
Oh, I
Next
wouldn't
one's
have got
Andrew
that.
Simons.
Andrew Simons.
Mitch Johnson.
Okay, this is the toughest one.
That is Hamish Marshall.
Coming in for... Whoa! Chris Morris. Unbelievable
Student of the game.
That's from the 70s.
He's cheated.
You've
cheated. You've cheated. You must have seen that.
That's not. So the bottom one, Hamish Marshall, one of the twins. Remember when T20s first came in? They played
No, Murray. That was incredible.
Thank you. Student of the game, Jean.
No, you know.
So Hamish Marshall, that bottom one of the afro, is when Australia played against New Zealand in the first T20, and New Zealand came out in the beige brigade with all handlebars, and they all were like taking the piss out of the game, and then obviously T20s kicked on from there. Australia kicked their ass.
And they wore the old 70s.
They wore the beige brigade.
Yeah. Gary Packer famously told Shane Warne, Shane was banned, was it taking a diuretic? I think it was. He famously told Shane Warne, what was it that he told Warne?
Ferrari.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great story, actually. So Warney had this red Ferrari, and he burnt it around town in Melbourne. Like, you can't believe it. He hit it hard in the way that we've heard many people. Hit the guts out of the thing.
Thanks, Sean.
And then he got banned for a year for the diuretic. And when he was banned for that year in 2003-04, it meant he couldn't play cricket anywhere. Like he couldn't even go to a net somewhere and bowl. No cricket. But he kept burning around town in his red Ferrari. And Kerry called him up to Sydney, and he went up, and Kerry revered Warnie and vice versa. And he said, son, he said, lie low, son. Take it from me, lie low. And son, get rid of the red Ferrari. Get under the radar, son. You don't need to be posing around town. Give it a year and it'll all work itself out, son. So when he went back to Melbourne, took his red Ferrari up to the dealer. He lived in the suburb of Brighton, not far out of town, and they had a smart car dealer. And he took the red Ferrari in and he said to the guy, he said, I've got to sell the red Ferrari. And the guy said, I'll give you whatever it was for it. And he said, I'll buy the blue one. Bloke said, so they did a deal. Warnie made a few bob out of it. 2 months passed. Kerry rings, hey son, how you going? Pretty good, Kerry, thanks. Yeah, pretty good. Hanging on in there. Good on you, son. Did you sell the red Ferrari? He said, I sure did, Kerry. He said, I sure did. Good on you, son. Always could trust you, my boy. And Warnie lived like that. He lived on the edge. Everything Warnie did was on the edge. There was nothing straightforward or uncomplicated or dull. He was the least dull human being that you'd ever meet in your life. An absolutely extraordinary human being with an energy and a power and a self-belief. In the main, he had odd little insecurities. And one of them was about his bowling, funnily enough. He'd often say, how am I going? How am I going? How'd I bowl today? He'd ring up, if we were in the same hotel or in the same, how'd I bowl today? Fine. You're pretty good at it. No, how do you think it was coming out? He was, it's coming out pretty good. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Great, thanks, bang, down go the phone. And I had more fun with him, and he's a bigger loss, partly because he was, 52 and had so much more to give. He adored this place, loved it, loved coming to South Africa. His little black book worked very well for him here.
He once said that he fell in love at least 50 times on every tour he came to South Africa.
Well, there you go.
At least 50 times.
Yeah.
But if you think
with himself often, but yeah. Great man, great friend, and a really bad loss for the world. I think he has so much more to give life and everything. But you could argue that in 52 years he gave it a decent shot. Right?
He had such an aura about him, didn't he, Warnie? I mean, remember at the IPL, he would walk into a room and everybody would, similar to what Graham's got. Graham's because he's a big dude and what he's done in the game and his big personality. But when Warnie walked into the room, you knew Shane Warne was there without being arrogant at all. He just had this aura about him. He's just a dude, man.
The Betway SA20 has seen unbelievable ticket sales, sold out stadiums across the country except Durban. Let's get back to our team in the field to hear what excites our fans most about this competition.
What's like the best thing about being in the crowd? You never know who you're gonna run into, mates that you haven't seen in years. I love the crowd getting excited, they get involved.
Everyone's friends with each other. There's no judgment.
Celebrating together.
It's really just a vibe, yeah. For me, it's just purely the quality of cricket. It's honestly just a great vibe. This is probably the best tournament I've ever been to in my life. One thing you guys think that the commentary team says when the cameras are not on them?
They swear a lot.
They judge the people.
Probably talk about when they're gonna go to the toilet.
What happened now? They're probably just asking each other what they have for lunch or breakfast.
You're a rough night, my boy. I'm surprised you're in the booth. I saw you having shots till 2 a.m.
I wanted to ask you about a mutual affectation for Bruce Springsteen. I mean, you and Warnie shared a lot of things, but Springsteen was one of them. I think perhaps you said you were more passionate about the boss than even Warnie was.
Yeah, he was a beginner. I mean, a complete beginner. I discovered Bruce Springsteen at school in 1975. I heard a sound and I was walking through his courtyard, and from one of the schoolhouses I heard this sound and I thought, what's that? And I bravely went in and knocked on a senior guy's door. Who are you? It doesn't matter who I am. What's the music? What's it got to do with you? Well, I'm interested in the music. What's the music? There was American. You wouldn't have heard of him, Bruce Springsteen. I went away and I just did this deep dive into Springsteen, and here I am, all these years on, as addicted to Springsteen as I ever was then. Warnie used to turn the ghetto blaster up and in the car. It was a nightmare. He'd have it on so freaking loud. He'd drive it a million, smoking his fags, his windows open of his sport Bentley across all the English motorways, all music. And so what we did with his book, I did his autobiography with him, and we named each chapter after one of the songs he most liked, and they all related to the subject that he was
What's your favorite Springsteen song? I'm more of a new Springsteen fan, so
Probably Thunder Road.
mine's Radio Nowhere.
Or Jungle.
Tougher than the rest.
My least favourite.
I'm a massive fan of Radio Nowhere.
Radio Nowhere. I'm trying to.
Just do that.
Probably
once.
Thunder Road.
Just do that once.
One more time.
I can't.
Do it again. Radio Nowhere. You gotta catch the camera. Come on.
Yo, yeah. Could you stand,
baby.
stand up? Please
Come
stand
on.
up for this. Stand up for
Mark Nicholas, ladies and
You're gonna do
gentlemen.
the air guitar standing up.
You can't get away.
Please.
1, 2, 3, 4. He goes, no, he goes.
45 hours of material of Warnie writing his book. What is some of the gold that didn't make the cut?
He was banned for a year, but there was a guy that on one of the industrial estates just outside of the centre of Melbourne. There was an indoor cricket school, and the guy who ran it, he knew a bit. And he went and saw him and said, if I slipped you a few bob, would you open at 6 in the morning for an hour? And the guy said, sure, revered Warnie, as everybody does and did. And so he said, you've got to be gone by 7 because I open at 7:30 and a lot of customers start to get here about 15:15. You've got to be out of the way. I don't want you to be pictured here or anything like that. I need to keep this business going. So Warnie would arrive at 6 o'clock and he'd bowl on his own in the nets he chalked out a sort of handkerchief target and for different ideas. So he had one from round the wicket into the rough outside leg stump and then one out for the googly. And he had these little squares that he aimed at. And then I came to stay with him in Melbourne, and I arrived from England, and you get in early in the morning and you're knackered after that journey. And he wasn't there. Now, I was just having a cup of tea, and then he came back in this training gear. I went, shit, what have you been doing? And he said, bowling, mate. Bowling in the nets, mate. And I said, right, okay. And he told me that he'd hired this indoor school. And he said, and you're going to come and bat. I need someone to bat. So I said, fine. So we go off the next morning, 5:30, and I pad up, and we had an hour every day for 10 days. And it was phenomenal because he'd set fields and we'd set each other challenges. He'd try to get them up there because it didn't really spin. The indoor schools have big bounce and big overspin, and they hit the bat hard, but it didn't really spin sideways. So you could actually hit through the ball, but it was very dangerous to play him off the back foot because if you got the flipper right, you were done. And we set up little contests for money, and it was an extraordinary experience and some of the most interesting cricket days of my life, because what comes from it, of course, is a bigger conversation always. So if you start talking about what, you're trying to pull a batsman across to off stump, so you bowl him the middle and leg, non-spinning, the slider as he calls it, it bowls him out because you've spent 3 overs getting him to here, and then you get it down his backside and you knock leg stump over. And he did that to Kevin Peterson, actually. Kevin Peterson played brilliantly against him in the first innings in the famous Adelaide Test of 2006-07, and then he did that to him. He got him sweeping, but he'd got so far over that he wasn't sweeping. He wasn't sweeping with anything behind the ball. So he was over here trying to sweep, and it bowled him down here. So he talked about all of that, and they were. I mean, we'd known each other for about 10 years by that stage. But that trip, 2 weeks staying with him, and then the various tours around the country were the period we got to know each other best. And we started to play a lot of golf, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and we had this music thing with, and he was just a very special human being, actually, very loyal, very honest, just a great guy.
I love this quote that I think is in your book. You asked him, what's the key to being a good leg spinner? Very unexpected answer.
Yeah, the art of leg spin is the creation of something that isn't there. It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you're creating a mystery. And the batsman is trying to work it all out and confusing himself. Because actually there isn't anything there. I'm just bowling you leg breaks. And I'm not a very good googly bowler. I'm a good flipper bowler, but actually my shoulder's gone now, and I've had a wrist operation, so I can't really release the flipper right. So all I've got is the leg break. So I'm creating something that isn't there to make you overthink it. So you can't play, you both know, you can't play top-level sport with what Martin Crowe used to call traffic. So if you've got stuff in your head outside of the playing of the game, you're buggered. You have to have a clear head to play top-level sport. And Warnie tried to jumble your head, to confuse your mind, to make you overreact. That's why, incidentally, he'd sometimes pick a fight. So if he had got out of bed sort of over-relaxed and wasn't at his most dynamic, particularly in a test match where you get tired, and he noticed that the batsman had a bit of control, he'd pick a fight. And seriously pick like really nasty
Get
stuff.
back control.
Whoa, some of his stuff would be nasty, hey? So you divert him from his thinking and fire up your own. And then all of a sudden he'd reverse the odds.
Daryl Cullen comes to mind.
Andrew Hudson took a beating for no reason from Ollie. He gave Andrew Hudson one of the biggest send-offs the world's ever seen, but he was frustrated with himself. That's why he did it.
And then he actually apologised.
Yeah, he said
the only bloke he was ever scared of was Brian McMillan.
No worries.
Because he'd given him a lot of the verbals out in the middle.
And he gave it a go.
And then he came in, in those days, at the test match, they came into the dressing room for a beer. Well, not in those days, I think the Aussies probably still do. But he walks into the dressing room, this South African dressing room, and Mac's there with a gun.
Took it from a cop.
And he said, enough of your lips, son. And he went, oh, no, Mac, sorry, you don't understand.
Martin Crowe, correct me if I'm wrong, may have been one of the first guys to talk about mental health in the sport and depression. Is that
Not one of the first, but he majored on it because he had this brilliant ability to write.
Yeah.
And he got incredibly challenging lymphoma, which is cancer of the lymph. And he got non-Hodgkin's, and he knew it was killing him, and he took up writing to get out his frustrations. And he wrote a brilliant piece called A Kinder, Gentler Game. And he wanted cricket to be easier on people. He saw, there's 137 first-class cricketers that committed suicide. And first-class cricket hasn't been going for 137 years, so it's more than one a year. And he just felt that the game was very hard on itself. And it didn't look after its people. It takes a lot of your energy and a lot of your time and a lot of your mindset. And you can sit in your hotel room at night when you're playing first-class cricket around the world and your head plays real bad games with you. And he understood that better than most because he really was, I would say, he had it in him to be called a great player. But he maybe didn't quite climb that mountain because of a mind that was sensitive and at times a bit bitter. He always felt he'd been picked to play for New Zealand a bit too young against Lillian Thompson and the great West Indian attack, and he wasn't quite ready. And then at the end, he played on a bit too long with his knee because he was talked into it, and he feels he didn't control his own destiny in the game quite as much as he would have liked to have done. But whether he was the first, I doubt he was the first, but he was certainly the first to make it a major subject for discussion.
And it's not the time when you're playing it. It's the time off the field, alone in your hotel room, thinking about it.
Would that be the same?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And also, once you retire, even more so. So the stat that you mentioned there, I wonder whether that's
current players
or retired players and current players. Because they actually did a study of retired rugby and cricket players and how they compared to kind of the average in terms of depression, suicide, and divorce, and way higher from the cricket and rugby sample. So it's interesting you say that. I think it's the competitive nature of that environment, but also then the fact that it's almost it's never good enough.
High profile is lonely.
Yeah, and never good enough.
And major examination every day, the spotlight hammered upon you, and you know, you're quite an unusual person if you don't feel that to some degree, because you're in such a public space and people are talking about you and misunderstanding you, and it's the misunderstanding that drives you mad. And you wish people understood what you were going through.
Because they don't know you.
To explain the position you're in. And that, I think, is a very challenging thing for sports.
Social media is a big component of it as well. You know, and when you're in it, when it's going well, you love it.
Yep.
But you need to understand that you live in that environment. So when it's going bad and people criticize you, unfortunately, it gets really tough. So
it's a terrible thing.
It's terrible. But that's why make your decisions wisely when it comes to that.
Well, I was told earlier, being in the social media era, was you don't read the good, you don't read the bad. And it helps you stay level as a player because it's like you said, it's so good when you're reading the good stuff.
Yeah.
But when you read the bad stuff, you can go negative like that. So you don't need the good, you don't need the bad, you crack on.
One coach said, you're never as good as they say you are, but you're also never as bad as they say you are.
Hell of a point, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Hell of a point.
Nick.
Can you get a shirt that fits you next time, please?
This one fits me.
Mark Nicholas, I think that concludes this episode of Banter with the boys. I just want to say, it's been said that you are the sexiest voice in cricket by my wife, and I actually agree with that. Kerry Packer once
she's blind.
Famously told you to take care of the game. And I would say you have done that and more, and made a big difference to the cricketing watching experience for millions of people around the world. So thank you for the service, your sharing your love of the game.
I can
and
cheers to that.
for joining us today.
I would love to cheers you. Mark, what a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a lovely thing to say.
That was beautiful.
See you next time on Banter with the boys. Woo! We're coming to you live from Hoogendrug in Paarl. We're in the middle of a street cricket match.
I'll be better now.
Oh! I'm going to tear it pick. Stop, boy. Under null.
That was gone.
That ball's gonzo.
That's gone. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Better be ready for that, because it's coming.
Is that camera expensive?
Jean de Villiers in his Paarl Royals pink.
That's a bumble. Bumble.
Bumble.
Bumble.
Bumble. It's quite peachy. That's smashed into the neighbour's house.
How's your chest?
Jean de Villiers looking quite stiff, actually, at the thought of going to Chris Morris. What are your thoughts on the Mark Nicholas interview? How did it go?
Soothed me with his voice.
Wow.
Very soothing.
Silky. Wow.
I thought you were very good.
There's a lot of sexual innuendo.
Massively for a guy in a pink shirt.
Why did you do that? Was that part of the script?